Hello and welcome to another video by the Worship Blender. This is another one of my everything review videos where I try to go really in depth on a particular bass that I have, give you a lot of information on it. Although I don't expect that this video will be as long as some of my other ones because this is not much of a bass to really talk about, but it is a little bit interesting. And this is a Squier MB4. Which is no longer in production as of the time I'm recording this video, which is August 2024. This bass was approximately built, I don't know the exact years, but I think it's like 2002-ish to like 2012-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And the bass was actually based on an earlier model by Fender, also called the MB series, MB4. And the MB5, I don't know if Fender had an MB5, but I think the Squier did have an MB5. But that Fender series was built, again, I don't know the exact date, somewhere around the 80s, maybe early 90s, something like that. And so the Squier then was picking up where that bass left off, but now only offering it in the Squier, on the Squier line. And so the bass is really quite unique for Fender slash Squier. I mean, look at that headstock. I mean, that is not your typical Fender headstock with this 2x2 tuner arrangement and the interesting shape there on the headstock. But otherwise, it's kind of your standard Squier type of bass where it's, you know, a lower end bass, PJ pickup configuration, reverse P2, which is interesting, passive bass. It's pretty straightforward. I like the color. This blue color is really quite nice. I do like the color a lot. Most of the times when you see this bass for sale on the classifieds, whether it's Reverb or Facebook Marketplace or wherever you happen to go, eBay, usually in most cases this bass is in a black color, and there's also usually some weird little skull and crossbone graphic baked in here in this location here on the body. I'm not sure why, but it seems like finding one in just a solid color without that goofy graphic is a little harder to find, and also it's not as common to find them in blue. So I'm kind of happy I got the blue color. I like it a lot. But I got to tell you, the story on this particular bass that I'm holding right here, it didn't used to actually look as good as it looks now, although it's still pretty rough. I actually bought it about a month ago on Facebook Marketplace, and I paid 50 bucks for it, which you think, hey, that's a good deal. But when I went to pick up the bass, it was pretty poor condition. I mean, really poor. And knobs and everything were falling off. The bass was just covered in grime, dust, cat hair, all kinds of stuff. You know, the neck was all dried out. It looked like it'd probably been sitting in a garage maybe for a decade or two. The strings were probably the original strings that came with the bass. It was really nasty, but I thought, what the heck, I'm really up for a project. I figured this will be my first real full restoration project. And it was a lot of fun. It was a little nasty at first until I got all the grime off, but I completely took it apart. Every single thing was stripped off of it and cleaned really well because I didn't want to have anything to do with that grime that was on there. Even resoldered everything up, got everything set up, spent a lot of time on it, and actually, you know, it's a decent bass. It's still something I paid $50 for, and I don't know if my bass is a good representation of all the MB4s that are out there, because again, mine was pretty well neglected for what was obviously a long period of time. So I'm sure that kind of minimized the quality of the bass itself over time. So yeah, it's kind of just, it's an okay bass. It's good, I guess, starter bass, but it's not even after I improved the playability after setting it up, it still is the most difficult bass that I have to play. Actually, I should rephrase that. It's the only bass that I don't really enjoy playing, or the only bass I have that's difficult to play. It's just it's not wonderful. But again, I don't know if my bass is a good representation of all the MB4s that are out there. But anyway, it did clean up pretty nice, although if you look at it up close, it's not as nice as it looks from a distance. I don't know how well that'll pick up on camera, but it's still, you can see all the battle scars on here. Mine has kind of this hairline crack along the back here and here. There's a lot of blemishes on it when you have it up in your hands and you see it up close. But anyway, this is the bass. I'm going to do some more information, give you some more information about it. I'm also going to do some sound examples. I probably won't do a whole lot of sound examples because, again, it's not a whole lot of fun for me to play it. But I do want you to hear it and see what you think of it. So let's kind of dive in a little deeper and check out this Squier MB4. All right, so here's the bass on a strap. Let's see how well it actually balances. So if I stand up, let it go, pretty much stays pretty much in place. Yeah, so it's pretty good balance on a strap. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's fairly lightweight. And when you first look at it, you would also think, oh, it's because it's got this nice long upper top horn here. But actually, if you look at this horn and get up here a little bit closer, I have to adjust the light so you can see a little better here. So here's the end of the horn right here, and here is the 12th fret of the bass. So as you can see, you've actually got a little bit of distance. It doesn't even, most basses would come out to about the 12th fret. This one is a bit shorter, and but it looks like it's got a really long top horn, but yet it does balance pretty well. So I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have this 2x2 headstock, which normally on a Fender bass you would have 4 in a row, and the bass headstock would be out a little bit further, where this brings in the weight a little bit, so it kind of helps with, I believe, the neck dive there. And again, it's a pretty lightweight bass. These tuners are fairly lightweight tuners. These aren't your big clunky tuners that you normally have on lower end Squiers. It's these, I forget the names of them. But anyway, they aren't too terribly heavy. So yeah, it balances pretty well. I mean, it's decent. I think most people would be perfectly fine with the balance on the bass.
I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh my gosh, he just stacked this bass guitar on top of a nicer Fender jazz bass. But I can assure you, I did this very, very carefully. So there's, I mean, I was very careful. So there's nothing to worry about here. I'm not scratching up either bass. But I just wanted to show you what the MB4 looked like on top of the jazz bass lined up with the rear of both of the basses together. Obviously the jazz bass has an offset body, whereas the MB4 doesn't. But you can kind of see how much smaller the body on the MB4 is, which is kind of cool, which makes it a more nimble instrument to play live on a strap. But you can see how the upper horn on each of the two basses differs, and also how the headstock is a little bit shorter. Even though this is a smaller bass than the jazz, it's still a 34 scale bass, just like the jazz bass that it's on top of. So, oh, and by the way, that is a 5-string jazz, so it's going to be slightly bigger or wider, you know, neck wise, but the headstock is still going to be the same length on the Fender Jazz 5-string. And then here's some video of the instruments side by side, so you can kind of see how they compare to one another. Okay, so the body on the bass itself is a little bit smaller than your typical full-size 34 scale bass. So that makes it a little bit easier to negotiate, but it's pretty much your standard, you know, 2-horn design with precision pickup, and this is a reverse precision pickup, because normally this would be on this side and this would be on that side, but it's reversed. The idea behind that is it helps to balance the strings a little bit better with these two strings, because now this is bring it out, it gets a little bit more bassy, and this a little less bassy. And so since these are usually the bassier strings, because they're the lower strings, it kind of helps to balance all out. This is of course the jazz bass pickup. It's got your standard bent plate jazz bass, Fender bass style bridge. It's got a volume knob right here. It's got a blend knob, so you can blend between the two pickups instead of two volumes, one for a volume here and a volume here. You have one master volume and then a blend pot, which blends between these two pickups. And then you've got a tone knob to do what a tone knob does. And the one thing I want to point out on this center, when you're at center detent on the blend, you actually get a huge reduction in volume. I have a hard time believing that it would have came from the factory like that. So my feeling is maybe there's an issue with my bass, or I did take it apart and re-soldered it, but everything was soldered the exact same way. Everything else works exactly as it should, but when I'm at center detent here, I get a massive drop in volume. So I don't know if that's really something that all of the MB series does. Again, I have a hard time believing that that's the case, but at least on mine, when I'm at center detent, I get a big drop in the volume. So either I have to be full on one pickup or full on the other pickup. Otherwise, somewhere in between, I'm going to get a drop in volume. If I flip the bass over, this is the rear access in order to get to the electronics. So if you open this up, boom, there's all your electronics in there, and then you can do whatever changes. Like say if you're modding the bass and you wanted to switch out the pickups, that's where you would go in order to access all your soldering. All right, so here's the headstock on the bass. Again, what's interesting about this bass being a Fender bass is that it's got this 2x2 tuner setup as opposed to 4 in a row. It's also got a non-standard looking Fender shaped headstock as well. So that's something to keep in mind. I do like this black painted headstock. I always like black painted headstocks. I think they look cool. That's just me, but I think they look cool. This right here, you can see this triangular plate right here. There's one little screw right at the tip of it. You unscrew that, take that off, and then the plate comes off. It's just a little plastic plate, and that is where you would have access to the truss rod. One of the things about the truss rod on this, let me grab the wrench here that you use for that. When you get in there between the two strings, it can be a little bit tricky to make that happen. So I find whenever you're going to make a truss rod adjustment, pretty much you're going to have to count on loosening both of these two middle strings in order to give enough room for the wrench to be able to move back and forth. All right, also what I want to mention on the MB4 as well is that, check that out, not common, at least that I know of, for a Fender style instrument. It actually has a slanted back headstock. Oh, look at that. That means it doesn't need any string trees or anything like that, so that's why you don't see that on here, because of that slant on the headstock. Again, that's something you don't see that often on a Fender instrument. Also something to keep in mind if you're going to transport this bass in a soft case, or really any case, you're going to have to make sure that the case has some room under here for that slant back. You don't, soft cases too, or could be, you know, they could put some extra pressure against that pressure point right there. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that the case is deep enough, like if it's a hard case, that it's deep enough to account for the slanted back headstock. The neck on the bass has 22 frets, some type of rosewood style fretboard. It could be rosewood or something else. I'm going to probably guess it's rosewood since it's an older instrument, but I don't know for sure. It's the back of the neck, typical maple, and as you can see, the inlays on it, and of course the inlays on the top. I don't know how well you can see that. This particular bass, again, I think because of the fact that it was neglected, my theory is that it was probably stored in a garage. So I think that's really caused a lot of negativity for this particular bass as far as the neck and the quality of it, of how it feels now and how it plays. I mean, the instrument plays well, it stays in tune, the tuners work and keep it in tune. The intonation's not bad on it. I could probably still tweak it a little bit more. But just the playability of this particular bass's neck is just not that great. And again, I think that's due to neglect. So definitely do not store your bass guitar in the garage or an attic. That's not a place where you put a musical instrument. Also, do not store your musical instrument in the trunk of your car or leave it out in the sun in your car or something like that. Just don't do that, because that's what will have a negative impact on these instruments and make them so that they don't play as well as they should, like this particular bass. And I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, because I'm sure it has to do with the neglect of this bass, not necessarily the way it originally came from the factory. All right, so I'm going to take some measurements with this new tool that I have here. This is my first time really using this. As I take these measurements, if you see me doing something wrong with how I'm taking these measurements, or a better way I could do it, just let me know in the comments below so that I can improve the way that I present this information. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some measurements here. First, I'm going to start off with the distance of the rear pickup to the bridge. There we go. Okay, so it's roughly 1 inch and 39/64. So that's a fraction there. There's some other settings here. Let's so basically 40.88 millimeters. So roughly 41 millimeters. Let's see if they've got some other 1 inch. 1.609 inches. All right, now let's do from the bridge to the P pickup here. All right, this is 4.4 inches. Well, it's like 4.4425 inches. Also 457 over 128 of a fraction of an inch. Or let's see here. Oh, millimeter, sorry. 112 millimeters, 112.84 millimeters. All right, let's do now the width here of the bridge from roughly the middle of the E string and the middle of the G string. See if I can get that here. Right at 57 millimeters. It's 56.99. So 56.99 millimeters. Now let's get the string spacing. Just right around 18 millimeters roughly. Let's see. Trying to get in the middle. A little over 18 millimeters. 18.18 actually, according to that string. Let's do another one here. This string here. That's more like 19 on that one. Let's see what it is on this one. Seems to be right around 19 on that one. Let me go back to this one. Yeah, it is 19. Okay, so roughly 19 millimeters is the string spacing. Okay, I just took the measurement of the nut width from the middle of the G string to the middle of the E string. And according to my tool here, it's coming in at 32.63 millimeters, which also converts to 1.2845 inches, 1 inch, 0.2845. All right, and then if you're looking to mod the electronics on it, one thing to keep in mind, it looks like it's got plenty of space. It's pretty deep down in here too. And there seems to be enough room here for some full-size pots to go down in there. The only real concern would be right here on this tone knob and how close it is to the output jack. The output jack actually kind of comes over top of it. So I would think that there would be no way to fit a full-size tone knob pot in this location right here. You could replace these, but this one's probably not going to happen, would be my guess.
All right, so my final assessment on the bass, and well, I almost hate to give it a rating because my particular bass, I feel like it's probably a neglected bass, and that's kind of hurt the quality of it over time. But I guess I have to deal with what I got. And so what I've got here, I would probably say 2 out of 5. You know, I want to like it. I think aesthetically it's a pretty cool little bass. You know, the nice colors. I'm always a sucker for a black headstock. So it's got that nice aesthetic to it. But as far as playing it, I just don't enjoy playing the bass. And also tone-wise, while I've played it, I did take it to church and played in a sound check just to see how it sounded through the PA. It actually sounded pretty good through the PA, but playability didn't play nice enough to make me want to actually play it in a service, so I didn't. But yeah, I think if I was judging it as a beginner bass, I would say, yeah, a comfortable 3 out of 5, because I think a beginner would be perfectly fine on it. And if you got it for a good price on, you know, used, hey, why not? It would work well for you. But I wouldn't advise it as a secondary bass, a backup bass, or a bass to mod for an experienced player, unless mine bass just happens to have, you know, a lackluster neck compared to other ones that are out there. I just find this neck to be really uncomfortable to play. My hand doesn't move really well on it, even though I polished the frets. They don't feel that great. I got fresh strings on it, got it all set up properly. it just doesn't feel that great to play. So yeah, I can't really give it better review than that. Hey, you know, Fender was to make this bass again and give it a better playing neck, or if my bass just happens to have a bad neck from years of neglect, then I think with a good playing neck, it would actually be a really cool bass to own, and I would definitely get behind it. But that's just my opinion. So if you enjoy it, and then play it, have fun with it. But of course, I also have to take into account that I'm mostly a 5-string player, so most all 4-string basses feel a little unusual in my hand. However, I just recently did a review on the the Squier debut series precision bass, and I was very impressed with that bass. Very low price point, and it's 4-string bass, and I was very comfortable on that bass. Played wonderful, and it sounded wonderful. So I would say, really, if you were in the market, unless you got your mind set on getting this particular bass, I would say if you're in the market for a beginner bass or a secondary backup bass, definitely check into the Squier debut series precision bass instead. So that's what I can tell you based on my experience. And so there you go. I hope this video was helpful for you. And if you liked it, if it was helpful for you, then definitely subscribe. And yeah, God bless you. Thanks for watching.